Hey, what's up everybody, it's Infinite here, and in this video let's see what we're going to create today.
Ice cold, nigga, not foes. I don't know where the fuck to go. I've been lost in the fucking grave in the snow. I'm with my name engraved on a booty plug.
Okay, so without wasting any time, let's start. The first thing that we'll do is we'll download our character. We'll be using Mixamo for our character plus the animation. So just head over to Mixamo and you can select any character you like, but I'll select this guy. I think he's on the last page. He's with a shield and a sword, this guy. So we'll be using this character for the tutorial. Plus for the animation, I had just search for hurt, and you'll get this. Where is he? Not hurt, just yeah, here, this one. So we'll be using this animation, so as if he's like hurt and he's injured. So we'll download it. Just see that the overdrive is set to 1. Overdrive is basically the speed of the animation. If it's 0, then it will be slow. If it's 100, then it will be fast. So let's keep it 0. And let's download our model. See that the frame per second is 24 with skin, everything fine. Download. Now before starting off, how I started was I had gone to Pinterest and I just searched for fire riot. So I got this rough idea by looking at these pictures, the first 2 pictures. Like the mood of the video, you can see it's similar. There'll be fire behind, and the idea was like there is some sort of a fire or protest going on, not exactly like that but similar. And there is this assassin or soldier which is injured. Like he was fighting and he got injured, and there's fire everywhere, chaos everywhere, somewhat like that. So the idea it got from here, and to store these pictures, like on my second monitor, I use this really nice app. It's called PureRef, wherein you can basically store all your reference images, something like this, and it's free to download. So I just select the image and I go to PureRef and I just keep all the pictures here. So I had selected multiple pictures. Even I highly recommend you that you have some reference images at the side of your screen so that you can refer it time to time. So just collect a bunch of pictures and use them as a reference. So let's start. First off, open a Blender, and now your layout might not look the same. Let me quickly set up the layout, so give me a second. Okay, so first of all, let's delete everything and your layout might look somewhat like this. So come up here and split it into 2, and now come down here and again split it. The up, change this to the shader editor. The down, let this be a 3D viewport. This will be the rendered view. This is where you will work, and rest everything is as it is. So let's start off by importing our character. And now before importing, I would like you to install these 2 add-ons which are free. The first one is the camera Shakify add-on. Just search for Shakify add-on for Blender, and there will be an option here. Go to the GitHub page, code, and download it as a zip file. And next is the Blender Kit add-on. Just download the Blender Kit add-on, download, and to install it, just come up to the edit, preferences, and add-ons, install. Now wherever you have stored your add-on, for example the camera Shakify add-on, just select and do not unzip the file, just select the zip file and install the add-on. So once you install, if you search for Shakify, just enable it right here. I'll show you later what the add-on does. First off, let's start off by importing our character. So just come to File, Import, and FBX. Go to your desktop or wherever you have stored, and just import character animation. Now quickly I'll show you the navigation tool. If you select the middle mouse and it will orbit, Shift plus middle mouse pans, and then zoom in and zoom out is your scroll mouse. So here is our animation, and if you play our animation, and we'll keep it to 40 frames long, which is 10 seconds long. You can even decrease it, no problem with that. So once we have a model, let's make our environment. Now for the environment, I had gone to the Sketchfab website and I just searched for junkyard, and you'll get a bunch of models, but the one which I really liked was, if you just search for, don't search for junkyard, just search for destroyed cars. Now you can download individual models and you can make our own environment, but there is this really nice scan of a garage, like a destroyed junkyard you can say, which is, let me just show you how it looks. And the creator is, yeah, you, the creator is Scandivo, so thank you Scandivo for the amazing scan. So I had used this model. I think it just matches the vibe of like what we're going to create today. I think it matches perfectly, so we will use this. You can even download individual and you can create, but let's use this. So select this and download the 3D model and see that you choose the converted format, that is GLTF, and download it. Okay, once you have downloaded the car, let's go into Blender, File, Import GLTF 2.0. First off, let's unzip our file. So go to File and right click, Extract to Destroyed Car, and here it will be your scene. So let's go to Blender and go to the desktop, File, Destroyed Car, and import this scene. It will take some time to load, and there it is. Currently it is too big, so what we'll do now, before proceeding, you'll see there'll be multiple objects, so let's join everything. So select everything, go to your viewport, hit Ctrl+J, and you'll see that it has combined everything into a single object. Let's rename this to mesh main. Just press enter and rename it, and now just press S and scale it down until you find the perfect size. Let's quickly change this to our material preview. Just select this and give it some time to compile the shaders. It will take some time, it will be done soon. And before proceeding, let's save our project file. So File, Save, and let's save a file. I'll name this Fire Main. Okay, now I had used, for the environment, I had used this part of the mesh. So we'll just move this part right here in the center, scale it up and rotate it R, and just to rotate along Z axis, R and Z, or the Z key. And I'll move it here, scale it up, I'll move this here. Let's quickly set up a camera. So press Shift A and camera, and now if you press numpad 0, you'll basically view through the camera. And now to lock your view to the camera, just come up to here or hit the N key and come up to the view and just select lock to the camera view. Now if you scroll back, your camera moves along. You can see in this view right here. So if you scroll, your camera moves along. So let's quickly set up a proper view, and for the camera's properties, I had used a 35mm lens. Plus just come up to the camera and select the sensor size. Let me quickly see which one. I had selected the Blackmagic, which one is it? I don't remember. Yeah, it was the Blackmagic Pocket 4K for the sensor size. Okay, let's quickly set up the camera right here and just come up to this view and press the numpad 0 to lock to the camera view. And here now it's currently locked, so even if you try to move, your camera will move along, which we don't want in this scene. So just come up here and uncheck camera to view, because this view is locked to a camera, so will work here. So press S, scale it up, move it here. It's still too small. Move this here, and currently you'll see the legs are intersecting, so just move the mesh down a bit. Also keep an eye on this window. I think the sensor size is just, now go to the camera sensor size and just change this to the analog 65. I just realized that I had the analog 65 for my final render. It's like a wide, sort of a wide sensor. So just come up to the here, lock to the camera view and unlock to the camera view, and we'll just set up a scene really quick. Change this to the material preview as well. So I think this is the correct size for our scene. Let's see. And let's play, and you'll have something like this. The scene is still too small. Until just scale it up until you get the perfect size for everything. Okay, and just come up here and clean up the workspace, so we'll hide the overlays which are present here. So currently we have something like this. And now you'll also see that we have this huge part of the mesh which is not visible. So let's remove this part. So to remove this part, just select mesh and go. If you just press numpad 7, you'll go to the top view. First of all, let's straighten this up. So press R, Z and just make this straight, and we'll just place it properly. Something like this. Now what we'll do is we'll cut this part of the mesh and we'll place it back so that it covers up the background and it fills up our environment as well. So select your mesh, go to the edit, not the sculpt mode, go to the edit mode, and you'll see the mesh, our mesh is way too dense. No problem with that. We'll go to the X-ray view and just come up here and select the lasso tool. We'll cut our mesh into half. So select this part and now press Ctrl I to basically invert our selection. And now right click, separate by selection. So you'll see now we have two parts. Go back to the object mode, we'll select this part and we'll just move it here in the background. Now press RZ to rotate it and we'll place it in the back, something like this. And now we'll cut this into another mesh again. So now select this part of the mesh, go to the edit mode and now select the part. We'll select the part until here, press right click, separate by selection, and now go back to the object mode, select this, and it's basically like kit bashing we are basically kit bashing environment, you can say that. So we'll move it here somewhat like this. We will not use this part because it doesn't look that great, so we'll use this part and we'll place it here somewhere. Again we'll cut our mesh, so select this mesh, go to the edit mode, so we'll select this part, select this part, right click, separate by selection, go back to the object mode and we'll just select this mesh, come to object, set origin to geometry so that it's in the center. We'll R and the Z key to rotate it along the Z axis, place it here, and we'll just scale this up a bit. Also I'm referencing everything to the final camera view, so keep an eye on this view as well. Just move it here somewhere. R and the Z key to rotate it a bit. Okay, so we have our basic part done. Now let's move on. Now if you come up to the render properties and see that you are using the Cycles render engine, plus for your device use your GPU. If your GPU not enabled, just come to edit, preferences, system, and see that if you're using an RTX card, then see that the optics is enabled. If you're using a GTX card, then see that the CUDA is enabled. If you do not have a GPU, then you won't get these options. So let's start. If you come up here on this window, press the Z key and change this to the rendered view, or just select this right here, viewport shading. Now let's start off with the main part of the scene, which is the lighting. Currently you'll see that even though there are no lights in the scene, our environment is still lit up. It's because of the default gray background right here. So we'll change this back to 0. So we have 0 lighting. So let's start off with some fire assets. So now hope you have the Blender kit add-on installed. If you just come to edit preferences and add-ons and just search for Blender kit. If you have installed like properly, you'll get this option right here. So just enable it and now just search for fire. So to start off, the way I started was I selected this fire asset and I moved it right here. You'll see, but we won't be using this as the fire which was in the background. It is just to light our environment. So just take it here and place it at the side and just scale it up. Move it at the side and scale it up right here. And if you just play, you'll say you have this really nice flickering. I really liked, and you can even see in the final video you have this flickering. You had this flickering of the light. It was because of this layer right here. If you want to change the speed of the flicker, see that you go to the shader editor and go right here inside in the fire controls, and if you just search for flicker speed, if you feel it's too fast, then you can just change this to 1. If you feel it's still fast, then just make it even more slow. And even you can even change the flicker amount if you like, and there are many more properties, so you can adjust that. The flame speed, if you want it to be more slow, then it will be more slow. Also, one more thing that I always do when I start with my project is, if you notice the camera, the outline of the camera is being rendered, but even outside the outline, Cycles renders that as well. Like if you notice, this is a camera and this is outside the camera, so Cycles renders that as well. So there is option which you can enable. Just select a camera, select this green icon and just come up to the viewport display, and you will have this option. I really don't know how to pronounce this.
Pass party.
But if you just skip it to 1, you will see that now Cycles renders only the part which is inside a camera. So if this is before and this is after, so see that it's set to 1. Okay, once we have that, also see that you change the viewport sampling to 50, and I always like to enable denoising with optics, and I'll be doing normal if you have a RTX card. Otherwise you can just skip it to automatic if you like. So once we have that, let's move on. So we have our basic setup for the flickering of the fire. Let's select this, press Shift D to duplicate it, and now to move this, press G and Shift Z to move it in the plane which is a Y and X. So you can, so remember, if you select your layer, press G and then Shift Z to move it in this plane. So we'll take our second fire asset and we'll place it somewhere here, S to scale it up, and we'll move it at the side. Let's see that it's not visible in the final camera view, and just change the flicker speed for this one. But before changing, now they currently both have the same material, so if you change one thing here, it will even change the properties here. So just come up to the material and just select this, add a new material. So now they both have their each respective materials. So select here. For this, I'll change the flame speed back to 1 and I'll move it back, and at the side, and I'll scale it up. I'll move it at the side. Then we have just some very little flickering here. Also select your layer and scale it up. I think I always tend to get the scaling wrong of the scene, I really need to work on that. I think yes, I think that's fine. Okay, so currently we have this. Now to start off with our main lights, let's start off with a single area light which will be on top of our subject. So press Shift A, light and an area light, and just move it up somewhat like this, and just change the color to like a warm color, somewhat like that, not too saturated, just a bit, somewhat like that, and just change the intensity to somewhere around 25. Okay, so we have this for now. Let's move our subject to a side a bit. Okay, we are getting there, right? Okay, so what's next? The next thing what we'll do is we'll add our fire stock footages at the back. Now first off, let's select our mesh and let's just push it back a bit, somewhat like that, and let's add our the fire which are burning in the background. Now for that I had used the stock footages from Action VFX. I imported them as a plane and I had used. Now you can use any fire stock footage if you had. It might be from Video Copilot, from Production Crate, or from anywhere else. Now if you do not have any of the fire stock assets, find yourself lucky, because the guys at Action VFX, they have a free sample pack wherein they provide 10 different assets for free, and there is some fire assets included as well. The link will be in the description, so go ahead and download that. So if you click the link in the description, you will be redirected to this page and just come up here, buy collection, and you'll see $0 because it's free. So just make your account and just download it. You'll get these assets right here, and you can use any of the assets you like from here. Also try to make use of your 3D cursor in an efficient way. For example, we need to import a fire asset here. So if you just press the Shift and the right key, you'll see that you move your 3D cursor at the particular point. Also see that you have this inbuilt add-on installed. It's called Import Images and Planes. See that it's checked on. So if you come right here, press Shift A, Images as Planes, and just select your fire stock footage which you want to use. So if you have the similar pack from the Action VFX side, then I'll be using the big fire, any of the big fire. So I'll be using this big fire. Just select this and click Import Images as Planes. So basically you'll see that our fire assets is imported at that particular point wherein our 3D cursor is. So just use it in that way. Now you'll see we have imported our plane. And if you just play, you'll see that it's way too small, plus it's just slowly starting off, which we don't want. First off, let's make our fire emissive. So just select it and plug it into the emission tab, and it will take some time, and just increase the emission strength to somewhere around 2. Now first off, you will see that our fire is starting off way too slow, so we'll just offset this part. So select your offset and just offset this. So let's move the anchor point of the fire to the center of the layer. So just select this fire layer, come up to options and select origins and move it down right here, and just come up here and uncheck origin. So now if you scale, it will scale from the bottom. So if you play, you'll see here something like this. I'll just move it at the side. Okay, somewhat like that. Now the color of the fire is a bit different than a light, so let's just change the hue of our fire. Just come up here and search for hue and saturation, plug it here, and take the color and plug it into the emission channel as well. So if you change the hue of your, you'll see it changes. We just need to make it somewhere, I think 0.550, no sorry, 0.450. It's too red. 0.480. Yeah, I think that's fine, and I'll just decrease the saturation by single value right here. So if you play, you have something like this. Now the next thing what we'll do is you can import, in the same way you can import many different fire assets and place as well, but just for the tutorial sake, I'll just import one more fire asset and I'll place it right here, right in front as a foreground element. So I'll just press Shift and right click to move my 3D cursor at this point, and I'll select a different fire asset this time. Shift A, images as planes, and I'll just select a ground fire. From the free asset, I think you can use the fire trail 10 plus the ground fire 2. I think it's similar. So remember what you have to do: plug the color to the emission, and we also need to offset it because it starts off with nothing. So come up here and offset it. Okay, right there, and move the origin to the bottom so that it's easy for us to scale it up and down. Options, origins, right here. Come up here, options, and uncheck origins. Scale it up. Also don't forget to save your file. I'll just move the fire asset right in front of the camera, someone like that. Also just come up, select your camera, and let's enable depth of field. Also one thing is, if you just come close to this layer and if you try to scroll in, it will be way too slow. What I recommend you to do is just select your fire layer, come up to this options, come up to the viewport display, and just change this to wire so that it's easy for you to scroll in and out. It has basically turned it into a wireframe. Same with the background fire, select it, viewport display, change this to wire right there. Okay, now let's enable depth of field. Our focus point will be obviously to our character, so just shift right click to set a 3D cursor right here, shift A. Let's create an empty and a plane axis right here. Now come up to, and just rename this to DOF, just DOF for depth of field. And let's also rename our layers: main, car, mesh. So select your camera, go to your depth of field, enable depth of field, select the eyedropper, and select the plane axis right here. And see that I think I had 1.4 as the value for my depth of field. Yes, and oh, we forgot to change the color of the fire, so just select the layer. Let's copy and paste our hue and saturation node. So select the background fire, select your hue, saturation, Control C, Control C, Control C, just Control C, copy it, come here, Control V to paste it, place it here, and the color will go to the emission right there. I think the fire is blocking our subject, so I'll just move it here. Let's see. Yes, somewhat like that. Our scene still feels empty, so let's fill up our scene a bit. We are not done with the lighting yet. There are still many more. There are still lights which we need to add. For example, here is the fire will obviously emit some light to our subject. That's the reason why I had placed this asset, because this asset will emit light to our subject. So what you can do is you can come up here and shift right click to move your 3D cursor, shift A, light, and you can create a point light. You can just move this point light right in front, somewhat there, and just increase the radius and increase the power as well, and just change the color. Just copy and paste the same hex code from the previous area light. Come here, hex, Control C, come to the point light, come here, go to the hex, Control V, and just place it somewhere at this side so that we have a more dramatic setup for our lighting. And obviously for this flow we need, I changed the flow to a more of like this wet reflective flow, like obviously water, so that the scene looks more interesting by the reflections of the fire and everything else. So just press Shift S and get the cursor back to your world origin, Shift A, mesh plane, and just scale it up and move it up as well. we'll adjust our character later. And you can create your material, but if you just go to the Blender kit and if you just search for wet, you'll get a bunch of different materials right here. Just select your plane and let's try this one, wet mud, right here. Click and drag onto your plane and we have a material right there. It already looks pretty good, but I think it's way too, I think the scaling is way too up. So just to scale the texture down, you can come up to the scale, click and drag to select all the three values, and if you just change this to 0.1, no, I think 0.1 made it more huge, so I think 5 or let's say 3. No, it's too small. 2. Yeah, I think 2 is fine. I'm not sure, but just change the location until you get some more water like reflections, and just move this plane down a bit, and you need to move your character up. So select your character, move it up like that, and just scale our background fire a bit. So select your fire. I think the background fire can be turned back to normal, so come to viewport display, change it back to textured, scale it up a bit, somewhat like that. Obviously the main thing which will enhance the scene is volumetrics, which we'll add later because it slows down your PC and your render by a lot. We'll focus on our lighting and setting up the composition at first. Okay, for now this is fine. Now obviously our scene is way too empty. We need many assets on the floor to basically like build up a story on our scene. So to fill up the rest of the elements, what I added was I added a dead zombie, basically a dead character, so that it adds up more to the story. So if you just head over to Mixer mode and let me show you, you can select a character which is injured, or I selected this guy right here, War Zombie F Pedro. So I had selected this guy, and for the animation, if you just search for fall, you'll get this animation right here, somewhat like this. Later we can just offset our animation, and you know, we can adjust it everything. So just come up here and just download this 24 fps and download it. So let's import the other character right here on the scene, and so come up to file, import fbx, and falling flat impact. So you'll have this guy, like if you start from the beginning of the time, you'll have this guy falling up. You can keep it, no, you can't keep it that way because that doesn't make sense. So you'll get all, if you just select the armature, you'll get all of the keyframes. So just press G and just offset it outside, like from 0, so it will already be lying on the floor. So you can select this character, move this here, scale him down a bit, R and Z to have you on the floor, move him up, place him here somewhere, R, Z. Just rotate it according to your liking. You can zoom it in and just see that his face is visible a bit. R and X to rotate it along the Z axis. Also just come up, press numpad 0, select lock your camera to the view. I think we need to move our camera angle a bit up because of this guy should be visible here, somewhat like that, and I'll just zoom it out a bit. Let me see. Yes, I think this looks fine. And just come up here, don't forget to untick camera to view, and so that You can set up a scene here. Move this up, move this guy up. See that you are selecting the armature, because if you select the bones and if you try to do, you will get all sorts of weird results. So see that you are selecting the armature. Let's rename him to zombie dead, not dead but dead, D-E-D, dead, zombie dead, and we'll move him on top. It's RX to rotate him a bit, RY element to rotate him a bit, somewhat like that should do, and move him in front a bit. Yes, if you play, you will have something like this for the timing. Okay, now let's starting off with adding more details to our ground, because it's still way too empty and we need to add more detail. Now you can download models from Sketchfab. Like for example, if you just search for debris, you can just download some assets and move it here, but I always use Quixel Bridge for such things, to add more details, and I use a Blender plugin to directly import it into Blender. So you can watch a tutorial on how to download Quixel Bridge and the Blender plugin, but for now I'll just search for tree trunk, and I'll go into the category 3D assets, and I can download any one which I like. I'll use this one. Should I use this one? I'll use this one. Okay, and you don't need to download an 8K resolution. Just see that you're downloading a 2K resolution asset and just download it. So once that's downloaded, if I just click export, it will basically export my tree to my Blender scene directly with all the materials and the good stuff. So I'll just take this tree trunk, and currently it's way too big. I'll just scale it down, R and the Z key to rotate it alongside axis. I'll space it here. Okay, so similar way, select more assets, download it, and just make use of a 3D cursor. So shift right click and set your 3D cursor at the particular place you want, and let's export it. So we have another tree. We'll just get it here, RC to rotate it, it's too big, RC to scale it down. Move the tree trunk here. It currently is intersecting, so we don't want that. So what we can do is we can move this tree a bit outside. You can even use such guides to basically direct the viewer's eye to your scene. For example, if you just select your camera, and if you come up to the camera properties, viewport display and composition guides. So for example, if you search out the golden ratio and come up here, and if you just toggle the overlay, it's too difficult to see because everything's dark, but you'll see the third guides right here. So you can use these of the visual, you can take help of the visual aids and the composition guides to basically compose your scene better. So I think this asset looks good here. And one thing that I always like to add is add trash to the ground. It just automatically makes your scene more realistic. So if you just search for trash, and I like to use if you just go on the Decals tab. Now the way you use them is, if you just create a plane, shift right click here, shift a mesh plane. So decals are basically, how do I tell you, it's like materials. Now decals are basically like stickers, I would like to say, like in a very simple way. So for example, I'll download, let me see what I can download to show you guys. Okay, I'll download this thing, small garbage scatter, 2K resolution. I've already downloaded. I'll just export it onto Blender. That's exported to Blender. If you just search for plane, let's rename this to trash plane. And if you go to the material preview, if you select if you just drop down this menu, and if you just search for trash, it's not trash, just search for garbage, you'll see you'll have this. And if you just select that, let it compile, you'll see you have like this really, you get it, right? It's like a sticker which you can move around and you can place right here. So just move, I think you'll need to move it up a bit for that to be visible onto your scene. So if you move it up, yeah, somewhat like that on the floor. So what I'll do is I'll just press Shift D, duplicate it G, and Shift Z to move it in the same plane. I'll move this back, and this time I'll download a different asset with more garbage basically. So it's already downloaded. I'll just export it to Blender and come up here and search for garbage again. I think it was this. Yeah, this is different. I think I'll move this in front of the camera and move it up a bit. Don't move it too up so that it will be as if it's floating in the air. So move it here, something like that. Again, Shift D, G, Shift Z, and move it back. And this time I'll download this one. Download. And export. And come up here, search for garbage again, and there we go. You can move this height as well and move this down a bit, somewhat like that. Okay, let's add more assets. For example, this part is still empty, so we can add something here. Let me see what we can add. So if you just search for debris, you'll get a bunch of assets here. Just from here, just select the category 3D assets, and you can add, I'll add this old tree branch in the scene as well. So you get the idea, right? You need to just fill up your environment with as many details and assets and models as you can. You can model your own asset, you can download from Sketchfab, you can use Quixel Bridge, anything you like, whichever option is feasible for you. So I'll move this somewhere here. Cut. Now if you see, notice these two, they both look similar, so we'll just rotate it R and Z to just change the direction a bit, somewhat like that. And now what I'll do is, let me see, I think still something is missing. This part is empty right here. So what I can do is, okay, we'll do one thing. We'll go to Sketchfab and we'll just search for junk yard, and we will, okay, we'll import this car right here, like a single car, and the creator is Rena Fox, he's a master as well. So thank you, Rena, for the amazing scan. So we'll download it. So let's import that car. So file, import gltf 2.0, desktop, fire destroyed car on the scene gltf. It will take some time because we have a rendered view and textured preview enabled, so it will take some time. And once that's done, you'll see you have this mesh. Just press S and scale it down. Now here is another thing wherein you can use your 3D cursor. Now your model is far away from your scene, so just press Shift and right click to get your 3D cursor right here, and now press Shift S and select selection to cursor keep offset. So your car will basically come into that place right here. So I'll just move this guy down. Obviously we'll need to tweak in the parameter because the material is not right and the cursor is also not right. Then first off, let's merge everything together. Select all of the objects, press Ctrl J. It will take some time. And now select your object, go to object, set origin, origin to geometry right there. I'll place it down, scale it down, R and C to rotate it. We'll use the back part. Yeah, we can use the back part. Okay, now if you just select the car and go to the material preview, let's see what we have here. Yeah, and the emission is turned on, so get the first, let's just delete everything from the and let's just search for the principal BSDF. Let's connect it. Let's connect the image to our base color, so we have a car back to normal right here. And also search for the hue saturation node, and we will change the hue of the car to more of like an orange color and orange, yes, and desaturate it a bit, also darken it a bit. Okay, we'll place this guy here. You can change the direction if you like. S, scale it up and see that it's here. See that it's not intersecting with a subject. And now what you can also do is you can add in a small fire asset inside of a car. So what we'll do is we'll use the same asset which we had used here. Only thing we'll do is we'll just select this, Shift D, G, Shift Z. We'll just place it here, and do not forget to offset this, otherwise it will see. Here is one more mistake which you guys make, and even I made right now. I duplicated my image, but I forgot to change this to a new material. So if you just select, and now if you offset, now they both are different right now. So just offset it by a bit and scale it down. You can place this inside the car. RZ to rotate it, scale it down, and let this be visible through the car. You play, you will see what you have. Okay, so don't forget to save your project. So just Control S and save your project. Now you can add way more details on the ground in here, but I think for the tutorial that's fine. Now let's add the main thing. Let's add a volumetrics on a scene. So to add that, first off press Shift S and get your cursor back to the world origin. Shift S, cursor to world origin. Let's create a cube, mesh cube, and scale it up so that it fills up the entire scene. Now before proceeding, it will be very difficult for you to to navigate around the viewport. So let's just select a cube. First change the name to volume and come up to the object properties, viewport display, and change this to wire. And now let's create a new material, and let's delete the principal BSDF, and let's just search for, press Shift A. Let's search for volume scatter right here, and now plug the volume to the volume. Now currently your view won't update, so just go back to the solid view and then back to the rendered view. Right there. Now the volume is, obviously you'll see something like this. It's because your volume is way too dense. So just select it and get the density to like 0.1. So just see, if you just select this and if you just press M, here's the before. I forgot, you need to just change the view to update sometimes. So you can see the difference, right? If you increase the density, it will be more dense, and if you decrease it, it will be more light. Now one thing that I see is you'll see the area light, emitting light, so the volume. So just select your area light and move it up. Sorry, do not move the empty null for depth of field, but move your area light up, more up. Also sometimes the snapping thing turns on and the proportional grid, so just uncheck those two if it's on and just move it up. Now as you have moved your light up, our scene has become more dark, so we will come here and increase our power to 50, I guess. Yes, and also the point light, the same thing. So what you can do is you can come up here, you can increase the radius a bit, increase the power to 75, something like that, and move it back a bit, something like this. Now what I recommend you to do is time to time just render out one frame. So just come up to the render image, or just press the F12 on your keyboard. So just render out and use less samples for now. I am just using 128 samples. So just render out your scene once and just see how it looks. Okay, so what I see here is the first thing is the fire is visible right here. The fire which we added just for the flicker, so we need to move that out. The second thing is I think this area feels a bit empty to me, so we will add something here. The next thing is I think the floor, you see the difference that the trash on the floor adds, so I recommend you to add whenever like it's possible, just add trash to your ground. It makes the scene more realistic. And I think even in the background we'll just move the junk, some of the junkyard cars here, and I think it looks pretty good as of now. And I can also see this white. See, that's the thing I am telling you, is the light, it's visible through the volume that we are using a light here. You will see that it's white here only in this point, and the area light is coming from top. So let's get rid of this. Minimize this, change this back to the rendered view. Also thing you can do, you can select your volume, go to the properties, visibility, and if you go down, if you just uncheck the ray visibility from the volume scatter, it means that the point light will affect the diffuse, glossy and the transmission, but won't affect the volume right here. I think that's what we need for now. Let's decrease our radius now a bit to get this hard backlight from the fires. For example, if you hide the point light, you'll see you have nothing, but if you have this point light, you have this backlight, and it feels as if the fire, it's because of the fire, but it's the point light which is acting as the backlight for a subject, somewhat like that. And I think we will also need to fill this part of our character. So what we'll do is press Shift D, G, Shift Z, and we'll move our point light in front. Also what you can do is, if the point light, obviously the point light affects everywhere, so we can change this to area light and just select the rotation tool here and rotate it so that it affects our subject a bit, so that basically this fire which we have in the foreground is illuminating, not eliminating. What is it? Is illuminating our subject. So we'll just scale this up and we'll move it at the place of a fire and just change the rotation. If you press RR, and I think this is much of an efficient way to rotate our lights. So let's see. So I'll decrease the size of my light, and I'll also decrease the power to 25. Also what I'll do is I'll select the point light again, Shift D, G, Shift Z. Always try to use shortcuts, it makes your life much easier. And I'll change the power to 15, and I'll place this light right here so that we get some more, so that the details are not lost basically. For example, if you hide the light, you'll see it's way too dark here, and we do not want that. So you can brighten this scene up, because later while we are compositing we can color grade our scene, right? So I'll just place it here at this side. Also, never place your lights right in front of your subject because you'll get this very flat lighting without any shadows. So always try to have either a 3-point lighting setup, or according to your needs you can place your lights in your scene. Okay, so we have this now. We need to move this fire back, and at this side as well. Okay, so we will fill up our background as I had told. So what we'll do is we'll select this mesh. You can pause the rendering here. We'll select the mesh, go to tab, we'll select this part, we'll select this part, this, right click, separate by selection, go back to the object mode, and now you can enable the rendering back again. I'll move it here, I'll scale it up, and I'll place it on top. R and C to rotate it a bit. R, C. Now if you want to enable the render region, because to save time obviously you can press Ctrl B and you can draw a box around where you want to render. It will render much more faster, so you can see the results more quickly right here. Once you have that, what I can do is, you remember the car which we had imported, we can duplicate that. So Shift D to duplicate it. Sorry, do not use Shift D, because it will just slow down your scene by a lot, because it's duplicating literally everything. Instead we'll use a instance, so press Alt D to instance your object, and this will be much more friendlier to your scene, I guess. If that's the word. We'll take this car, we'll move this here, RZ. Now it's in the background and it won't be visible, it will be barely or hardly visible, so I think that's fine. So just move it here. I just want to fill this part in the background. Okay, so once you're done with that, and if you want to disable the render region, press Ctrl Alt B. So Ctrl B to draw your render region, and Ctrl Alt B to disable it right there. Okay, and we need to add something right here as well. So what we can do is we can quickly duplicate this car again. So just select this car, Alt B, sorry, not Alt B, Alt D to Alt, select the car, please, Alt D to instance it again. It will take some time, and just move this guy here. Don't forget to rotate it so that they don't look the same, and also scale it down a bit. What's next? That's a good question. Let's animate our camera. Now I use this technique literally all the time, so let me show you how I do it. So now we have basically set up a composition, and we need a final frame to look like this. So what I do is I go to the end frame, and if you just go to the object, select your camera, go to the properties, and just hover over one, or just hover over this and press I to add keyframes both to location and rotation. Now go to the first frame, and first of all I'll just move the camera back a bit, just a bit, and I'll press I to set a keyframe. Just hover over the properties and press I, and I'll go to the last frame and I'll move it even more, something like that, and I'll press I again to set a keyframe. So let's pause the rendering for now and press the numpad 0. Just hide the overlays for now and just play your scene. Obviously it will be slow because it's in your material preview, so what you can do is you come to playback, you can change this to frame dropping. Now it will play real time, but it will skip frames in between, so something like this. Okay, Now this is fine, but we do not want the camera movement to be this way. Like it's way too linear, we need some handle camera movement. So that's wherein really cool plugin comes into play, which is the camera shakeify. So if you just press the plus key, by default you'll see you have this already looking good, but obviously the intensity is way too much. So what here are some very easy properties. If you decrease the influence, it is basically like the amplitude. So if you decrease, it will be much more slow. Scale is, if you increase the scale, it will be more like the floating type of a animation. And the speed is of the speed of the shake. So the speed, what I do is I keep it like 0.75 scale. I do not mess with the scale. The only thing what I do is I decrease the influence. If you go to the solid view, it will be a bit fast. You'll have something like this. And you can even there are even presets which you can try them out, but you can also add on like one shake on top of another. So if you just press the plus key, so you have two different here. So from here, for example, I can select the walk to the store and I can decrease the influence. So basically we are mixing between two different types of shake presets, you can say that. And here I'll get the scale down and I also get the speed up a bit. I'll get the influence up. So you have something like this. I think I'll increase the influence a bit more, a bit less. So that's it. That's how I do all of my camera animations in Blender, just for the timing. Not every time I use this, obviously for some time you don't need the camera shake and you get it right. We'll change it back to the material preview. So we have our camera animation done. We are done with the lighting. We're done with setting up a composition. Let's render out our scene. Just one single frame. So render. I'll just go to the slot 2 and I render this out again. Okay, so after the rendering of the image is done, I notice more problems here. The number one is this car is intersecting right here. This guy's leg is intersecting to the ground, I guess. And the fire here is way too close because you can see that this part is too bright. So we'll fix that quickly. And I think the depth of field, let me check. If I go to my camera, the depth of field is not affecting that much, so I'll just get this down. Do not get the depth of field to 0 because it will just look like a miniature, something like that. Like, please do not do that. So just get it up. I think 1.2 is fine. I'll move this guy up. Obviously this is just the part 1 wherein we are working in Blender. There is a part 2 wherein we will composite this in from this to this in After Effects. Obviously now once we are done with this, you can just move around, set up a new camera and you can render multiple angles. But for now we'll just set up our render layers. Now if you just want to color grade in After Effects and if you do not want to work on the compositing part, then I recommend you to export this as a PNG sequence. But if you are compositing this and if you are adding fog elements, particles and much more things, then I recommend you to export the OpenEXR multi-layer. So just come up here, and also the resolution you can set it up as you like. So let me go down and change the frame rate to 24 fps and set up your output property, and I'll just rename this to main fire. So to set up EXR layers, and I'll show you how to work with EXR. So just change the file format to OpenEXR multi-layer and come up to the passes, select the Z, the mist pass and come down, select the emission pass, select the ambient occlusion and I think that's it. Just select these check boxes and I think we're done. If you come down, let me quickly see. We have this setup, output, color management and samples. I think with 128 samples, I think we are getting a pretty decent render. If you change this back to noisy image, we don't have much problems and we won't get that denoising artifact. I think 128 samples is a pretty good number. Or if you have a slower graphics card, or what you can either do is you can either change the resolution to 1280 by 720, or you can decrease your samples, but do not decrease the samples more. I think the minimum you can go is 64 samples. I'll be using, if I just go to render, I'm using 28 samples with denoising on, open image denoise, albedo and normal, and accurate. So these are my render settings, and see that your noise threshold is turned on. So once we are done with everything, 25 fps, so you set up your main file, open EXR multi-layer, check these boxes. So once we're done with that, come up to, and also see that you change this back to wireframe, the viewport, because even this affects your render time. So see that everything in viewport, close here the apps you don't need, render animation. So I'll meet you guys once the render is done in the part 2, wherein we'll composite this in After Effects. So see you guys there. Bye bye.